Welcome back to Hannity. The terrorist attack in San Bernardino on Wednesday is likely not an isolated incident. Now get this, there are currently over 1,000 ongoing ISIS-related investigations in all 50 states, and according to a study done by the researchers at George Washington University's program on extremism, get this, 71 people have been charged with ISIS-related crimes since March of 2014. And that's not all. According to the House Homeland Security Committee, over 250 Americans have traveled overseas to fight with ISIS or other terror organizations since 2011. Joining us now with reaction, author of the brand new book called Duplicity, former Speaker of the House, and of course a Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich, is with us. You were on my radio show today, and I want you to, at the end of the interview, you said something that was extraordinarily chilling to me, but I actually think it's true. You said that this president represents the greatest national security threat to ever occupy the White House. And it's not something that I think any American wants to ever say about any president, putting all politics aside. But you believe that. Why?
Well, I think that the danger from Islamic supremacists grows every year. I think sooner or later they're going to learn how to make biological or chemical or nuclear weapons, or how to buy them or steal them. I think we have at risk losing an American city. And I think you have a president who, for psychological reasons, for ideological reasons, for whatever reason, is incapable of dealing with, recognizing, being honest about this threat. And let me say, one simple change, Sean, will begin to move us in the right direction. What happened in California was an act of war. We need to drop this notion that there are these random terrorist acts. This was an act of war. It was an attack on America by people who want to destroy our way of life. And once we get this in our head, these are acts of war going on. These are people, there are 1,000 cases of people preparing to wage war against the United States, and you have an attorney general and a president and a secretary of state who are incapable of understanding the reality of the world we live in.
It really is stunning. And when we learned that we wouldn't bomb the oil fields where ISIS is getting its money because of environmental concerns, that's scary. But how can the president be so wrong so often, the JV team, that they are contained, that they are not an existential threat to America? All comments by the president. All wrong.
Well, remember, the president contemptuously talked about how Republicans were afraid of orphans and widows because he apparently has no notion of how often women have been very successful and very effective terrorists. And now we have a new example. Here's a woman who pledges her loyalty to ISIS on her way to kill Americans. Maybe the president will face reality and understand the Republicans who are worried about women terrorists are right. These are real people. These things actually happen. And yet this president seems to live in a fantasy world surrounded by the Secret Service. He's personally safe, but the rest of America is not.
Well, that raises then the question of the president's insistence on 10,000 Syrian refugees. I think this is important. The director of national intelligence, James Clapper, James Comey, the FBI director, the assistant FBI director, the general in charge of strategies to take on ISIS, have all said we cannot properly vet these people. As a matter of fact, Obama's own Department of Homeland Security vetted this woman and gave her a K-1 visa and then a green card.
Look, the Congress should put in the continuing resolution that's coming up a prohibition on any funding that goes to fund new refugees coming into this country from Syria, because the truth is we have no idea who these people are. And I think the White House statements are just total falsehoods. Why they're saying them, I can't quite imagine, but I think it fits their worldview. They're not in the business of protecting Americans. They're in the business of, as you saw from the Attorney General's comments, they're more worried about protecting Muslims and the sensitivity of Muslims than they are about protecting the lives of Americans.
I keep talking about a clash of cultures, a clash of civilizations, and I keep using examples. If somebody was raised in Saudi Arabia where women must dress a certain way, cannot be seen in public without a male relative if you're a woman, cannot drive a car, under Sharia in other countries, 4 male eyewitnesses for rape. I bring these examples up. how do we ascertain whether or not somebody is coming here to assimilate and get the breadth of freedom and liberty that they've never had and give it to their children? Or are they coming to bring their ideas to us and bring those views with them? I'll give you an example. Since Obama's been president, 239 people, according to Senator Jeff Sessions, 83,000 individuals from Pakistan, 83,000 from Iraq, 239,000 total people from 2009 to 2013 have come from what we would describe as terrorist states, or states that are hotbeds for terror. Should we rethink that? Do we have to revisit that? Student visas for Saudi students, for example.
Look, we have to more than rethink that. Remember, the husband who was involved in the act of war in California this week is American-born. The British subway bombings in the 1990s were by British citizens who've been born in Great Britain, given a free education, lived in public housing, lived in the British welfare state. So you have this whole problem, as I describe in my novel Duplicity, of an epidemiology. This is a virus. It's not ISIS in Syria, or it's not Boko Haram in Nigeria, it's not al-Shabaab in Somalia. There is a worldwide pattern of Islamic supremacists that is gradually moving on the internet that is more and more dangerous. There's some evidence that the pipe bombs, for example, in California, were built coming off of a website from Al-Qaeda.
Yeah. You know, here's a scary thought. The president said if you're on a terror watch list, you ought not be allowed to buy a gun. Well, Congressman Steve Lynch pointed out back in August, the Department of Homeland Security, this should shock every American about how bureaucratic and incompetent our government is. Our Department of Homeland Security, they have 72 individuals that work there that are on the terror watch list. I mean, if they shouldn't buy a gun, they shouldn't be working for the Department of Homeland Security.
Let me go a step further. If they're not American citizens, if they're here on a visa, or why are they still here?
That's a great point.
We should have a very expedited procedure for extraditing anybody who ends up on the no-fly list.
We keep talking about the crimes of criminal aliens. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Let me talk about the impact that the events in Paris and now ISIS on American soil that you think will have in this election. My last question.
Well, I think the Democratic Party is in grave danger of becoming a party recognized for its inability to protect Americans. I think the American people will not tolerate being at risk. And I think that strong personalities, this is a big asset to Trump. I think it's a pretty big asset to Cruz and to Rubio because all of them come across as very strong personalities. And I think people want strength. People are legitimately frightened. It's not illegitimate. And the Attorney General's comments yesterday were insulting to every American. You have every right to be frightened. Paris and San Bernardino are not isolated cases. We are, in fact, in danger. And I would argue that we need a wartime president. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.